PlayStation has decided to stop making physical disc for their games. And unfortunately, I, for the most part, agree with them.
This is one of my favorite video games of all time. Jak and Daxter, the precursor legacy from the PS2 days over 20 years ago, and this copy is printed on PlayStation 4, which from 2016 to 2018, Sony was doing that program where they were re-releasing PS2 games by emulating them, putting them on the store, giving them trophies, up-resing them. A really cool way to access those games on new hardware, but they were digital. Some of those games, the Jak games, got prints physically via LRG. Now, we're not here to mull over the business dealings of LRG as a company, but it is a really cool thing to have this particular print of the game because, well, nowadays, if you wanted to play this version of this game on PS4, you actually can't do that. And it's something very particular, right? Because Jak and Daxter got re-released again on PS4, PS5, through a new emulation company, which PlayStation never wants to name these people, but they put out these games on PlayStation Plus Premium. It's part of the new Classics program. And so the new version of Jak and Daxter...
Or that they basically deleted, by the way. This is one of the flaws about having digital games, right? Is because PlayStation could pretty much delete everything that you paid for. I think that's criminal. I think that should be illegal.
Which is title ID'd as native PS4 and PS5 versions, has replaced the old PlayStation 4 version. Now, a hardcore PlayStation fan would know this and talk to you about it, but the whole point I'm making here is that there is that version that is preserved on disc, and sure, my copy is sealed, but it's just the semantic argument of it's so cool how all that even played out the way that it did, and you're taking that away. It's such a 1%er thing, but this is something that PlayStation has completely lost the plot on as far as announcing the ending of physical media production by January 2028, which is you are cutting off the evangelist, the mega fan, the culture. It's firmly ingrained in the culture of how we discuss and talk about video games oftentimes, I would argue, and that's cool. It's cool, right?
Yeah, it's cool, but it does cost money. It definitely, financially speaking, it doesn't make sense for Sony to print video games because realistically, no one really has space to store video games, right? You have to, one, be an enthusiast, two, have a lot of money. When I say a lot of money, I mean your own house, big place, a room that you can dedicate to putting video games like this guy, right? Like personally, do you think you have enough space or do you want to dedicate space to put all this, all these video games? How much space this is gonna take? This probably took up like 10 by 1 at least, like square foot of your space, right? 10 square foot of your space that people generally don't have. So actually, as a matter of fact, I would challenge you guys this. You can look at the past 15 games that you bought, right? How much of it is physical copy and how much of it is a digital download? You can even look at YouTube celebrities, like Critical or something, and just like ask yourself, like, how much of the games for the past 15 games or 20 games did they buy was actually physical? I'm very certain that it's zero. They probably did not buy any game physically.
That I can be this 1% and yell at all of you about it, and most of you can not even care about it in the sense that you would not want to go out and buy this copy of the game. It might be very expensive on the secondhand market, but you enjoy the novelty of it. You enjoy the novelty of me talking about this and going on a tirade for as long as I have been about it. And if this argument is not doing anything for you, then let me pull out this crotch copy of Demon's Souls that I've had tucked away during this whole rant, which is a launch PlayStation 5 title, maybe $30-something on the secondhand market. It's just very consumer-friendly to buy it that way, versus these $70-something the game is still available on PSN for, and yes, it's on PlayStation Plus Extra, but are we really going to get into the weeds of subscription versus a digital license? I don't know. I don't feel too confident getting into that. The point is, we all know why it is fantastic to have that option, right? Because the overwhelming majority of people could still buy the game digitally. Experience it through PlayStation Plus Extra.
Sure.
But you want
and
that option.
Most 90% or even 95% of people would prefer digital over a physical copy because not many people that enjoy video games, they don't like to use their space to store video games when they can use it to maybe, put a sofa or put a TV or maybe get like a bigger bed for their bedroom. Nobody really have this much space like in this dude's background to, put video games on.
it should be there, especially because of all the misleading characterization that's been going on with this medium, the sales ratio. Let's cover up some of this, right? So a big thing has certainly been that metric that PlayStation puts out every quarter, which is their digital software ratio. They do openly say this during their investor relations portal releases, and so we know it's getting up to 70%, 80% during some quarters, and so the ratio
I'm
is
guilty
favoring
too. I'm part of that
games
statistic.
more and more. But the byline on that does say, and I quote here, full game software digital download ratio is calculated by dividing PS4 and PS5 full game software units sold via digital transactions by total full game software units, end quote. And so this is an argument I've made many times over the years on Let's Talk PlayStation, which is that ratio can be misleading in the sense that you should not broadly think of it as that is how the split works, because there is, of course, a large portion of games that are digital only on the PlayStation Store. A $1 digital game very much does count as a full digital game, and that adds up to the sum. But the ratio is still calculated based on the units and the revenue, and so it's not as even in both directions. It's misleading, sure, but you can't necessarily use it and prop it up in this way to work for your argument at the time. There's simply
but at the same time, there are many cases when buying a game in the physical form, secondhand, you're paying more money because you're also paying for the inventory, right? When a business is holding inventory, they have to increase the cost of holding the inventory along with salary, right, for the game as well. And people are generally paying $5 more for the physical copy when they could just pay $5 less. In order to engage in the primary reason of playing a video game is to play the video game. They're just buying the game for the experience. They're not buying it to collect it, generally speaking.
No denying it, right? Because if something goes to retail, chances are it will sell overwhelmingly better than a $1 digital game, which is likely not very good anyway, right? It really depends on the more semantic, in-the-weeds argument of what kind of narrative we're trying to get across here. So it's always a game-by-game basis. That's why many people are referencing the Insomniac breach info that we got when that happened. And so we had a chart from PlayStation, various first-party PlayStation Studio games, and it was surprising to see, at least up to mid or late 2022, that many of those PS Studio games leaned very physically. The sell-through rate on many of those games were surprising, to say the least. However, that was 4 years ago. Things change, and they do change rapidly. It works in both directions. The point is, on a game-by-game basis, some games skew very heavily towards digital. Others can still surprise us. It's, I would argue, and it's very much
I need to drop a deuce.
True, which is it doesn't happen nearly as often nowadays. Something like an Astrobot can be very physical in the UK and Europe, and I don't think we have any ratio for that game in the US, but we're trying to speak more broadly here, so we can't dive into so many different numbers, but I think it's very important to address the misinformation, which is that's how the ratio works. It is still, for the most part, skewing very much towards digital, and that's okay. That's the thing, right? This is the argument we don't have to sit here and make, that PlayStation's lying about their own numbers. Why? What are we doing here?
Oh yeah, to some degree they are lying, but at the same time, I don't really think so. You see, his argument was that a lot of the sales are based on video games that are worth $1 or $5, right? Which is indie games. But I think people are justified to buy or more inclined to buy indie games because these AAA games, they're not AAA quality. They are single A or maybe B tier at best sometimes, or most of the time. That's why people are swinging into indie games, right? It's not just because let's buy more indie games to fuck up the stats.
Right? We all know that it's not as big as it was, and that's okay. The argument we should be making is that it should stick around for the goofy stuff I just spent 2-something minutes at the beginning of this video doing, right? It should be there for your evangelists, for your fans. There should be some sort of qualitative analysis that even though one portion of the business is not worth it, maybe we should still humor it because you have a fandom there and you want to foster that and keep them there to champion your products for as long as they reasonably want to. Now, I want to make something very clear here, which is, this being a YouTube channel where I primarily cover PlayStation, there's, of course, a skewed interest in my case. I always try to be as objective as I possibly can about PlayStation, the business, the things they choose to do, but there's no excusing it, right? The whole point why I would ever make the channel back in 2012 is that I was a fan. I still am a fan. But I digress. I would hope that you at least walk away from this conversation understanding that it is coming from a place of objective, or as objective of thought as I could possibly give on a very meaningful topic to me. Now, one thing I wanted to also touch on in this conversation are some comments from Sean Layden, the former chairman of Worldwide Studios. So they were speaking with Eurogamer on this topic, and he did give some words about what he thinks is going on, which he does say, and I quote here, "I had no idea it was going to happen. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I don't work in the business anymore. Maybe it's just too prohibitively expensive to stamp out discs." If you look at any decision to discontinue a product or a feature or a model or what have you, largely it's a straight spreadsheet decision. What are disc sales compared to digital sales? And I'm old enough to remember when digital sales...
I feel like with disc, they should probably just downsize the printing situation, right? Kind of like, making a Ferrari where, they only have like 72 or something. Like with this, I guess you could just like release about 10, repackage it like to make it a more premium experience, and then they could just do it that way, right?
Sales were like 10%. I'm old enough to remember when digital sales...
But companies are so fixated on profit. And companies are mega fixated on profit, right? Because it works. It does work. Consumers will consume the dumbest crap ever. Like fast food, for example, right? McDonald's fell off. It fucking fell down the fucking floor. It fell into the earth's core. But people still pay for it. It is expensive. McDonald's is expensive. It's fucking overpriced, right? The fucking fountain drink is like $3.50. A McChicken is $3.50, and that was like 2 years ago. It's probably $5 at this point. Everything expensive, but people still buy it. All right. So you, at the same time, you want to shit on these companies for max profiting, but at the same time, people are still paying for this garbage.
That number just grew over time.
That's why Sony can get away with deleting the disc manufacturing
in entirety. So there is a tipping point, where if I have 80% of the opportunity, which represents 95% of the revenue source, what's my incentive to keep the lights on for the other 20% if it's effectively only 5% of the business? See what I'm saying? At some point, it just becomes obvious that we can't keep this whole thing running just for this very small slice of opportunity. That last paragraph is a really good point, and I want you to remember that. But first, let's also mention what he said about physical video games being sold on the secondhand market. So for that, he said, quote, "They used to be a huge factor. The whole GameStop business model was driven around the used game, and then over time, the rise of digital kind of squashed that used game business and made it hard for folks who were making a nickel in the secondary market by selling them. I don't think that reality necessarily drives this decision, because this has been happening over time. I think right now we've reached some kind of homeostasis where it's in a weird sort of balance. Secondhand gaming still occurs, obviously, but it's not material anymore to the business to worry about, I think." End quote. That's the other big overarching, I guess, conversation taking place, is rationalizing why would PlayStation do this. And there's many valid X, Y, and Z reasons being made, which one of them could be the secondhand market for physical video games, but also publisher control, them wanting some decent leeway time for sending a gold master for submission, so studios don't have to worry about that anymore, because quite frankly, we've already been messing that up for the past 2-ish years, where it's been getting more and more egregious. You have the Halo account trying to slam dunk on this news.
Halo campaign that drops this month. Learn what to expect from the launch. By saying, hey, we're offering a physical print of Halo. You're not putting a gold master on the disc. You look silly doing that. And there's many other scenarios where that's been happening, but I digress. The point is, there's that. The publisher control in general of, yes, it's going through a singular storefront. And sure, PlayStation is now making that announcement that we might see some games
go to retail via digital download codes, which will make them very compliant for any sort of litigation that they'll still be facing, which they are facing, many of them. So we can see how PlayStation would want to navigate this and safeguard. At the time of filming, they've not said anything on social media because there's been so much pushback, and rightfully so. But going back to that last, the one paragraph that Sean mentioned that we read out loud, which is, it represents such a small portion of the business, so why would we keep doing it? And this is where, like, that's the thing, right? There's so much noise about all this other stuff. I think, Sean...
Well, yeah, I think you should just not make that many copies anymore, right? Just don't make any more copies. Just judge it based on demand. You know, if it's just 20%, then produce the 20% of the amount. I feel like there's definitely still a revenue gain from making physical discs. It's just that, you know, companies are thinking about efficiency, and arguably people are getting lazier.
For the most part, has really hit the nail on the head. It might simply be a spreadsheet numbers kind of thing. You know, I don't think there's anything super untoward quite to the degree that people are making it out to be, but that's not really important. Whatever the case is, I think the counter argument does simply need to be that this stuff should stay around because PlayStation has completely lost the concept of goodwill. It is just a foreign concept to them nowadays of offering just goodwill initiatives. Yes, this portion of the business might not be doing nearly as well. Maybe it's really prohibitive, and printing the discs is far more expensive, and it goes through our facilities, right? So, you know, it's a big vertical of the business that, you know, there's an opportunity cost because we could be shuffling these 300-something people onto a different technology, a different assembly line. You know, there's so many...
Yeah, just print 10,000 discs. It's going to be sold out, guaranteed. Just, like, print as much as you think. Like, if you think... 20,000 people are gonna buy the disc, just print 20,000. Just print 10,000. Print half of the expected demand, and then, you know, problem solved.
Angles of, like, we get...
If you didn't print enough, too bad. You should have fight harder for it.
That needs to start really zeroing in on the concept of, you have some hardcore enthusiast fans, and this could stick around for the foreseeable future. You know, for the longest time, I thought to myself, PlayStation 7 is where we will not have discs anymore. But now I don't really subscribe to that idea with this very new and too soon announcement of ending physical media. Why? Why does it have to go away? It's such a small portion of the business. It's not. I don't think it's making any sort of material impact, as Sean is alluding to, with secondhand game sales. The transition happened. It happened throughout the PlayStation 4 cycle, where they built up so much goodwill, right? From the famous sharing used games on PS4 video. Despite all that goodwill and the championing of physical media, consumers still naturally skewed towards a singular storefront. They got what they wanted. So why not still support the smaller community of people to keep doing what I do and many others do, which is just be evangelists for the platform?
That's because it's not financially viable. And I get it, you know, like, you're getting tired of companies not having goodwill, but then really they're answering to executives. They're answering to shareholders. If shareholders see that you're expending resources to do something inefficient, you're gonna be like, what the fuck, man? Let's replace this executive. He's a dum-dum.
When they're doing the right thing, and oftentimes PlayStation in recent years has simply not been doing that, but I think you get my point, right? Why kill this enthusiast space of people going to that GameStop?
You can also make the same argument with VHS, right? Like, oh, why don't we just keep printing VHS, those cassette tapes for movies? You know, there's still a small audience that prefers VHS, right, or cassettes. But okay, well, now we gotta start a whole factory. We had to set up the factory line, and then we had to order the parts. We had to... Not many companies make these kinds of, like, plastic anymore. No company make these kinds of films anymore, so we had to source that from somewhere, and they're probably going to charge quadruple or even 20 times the price of what it normally costs to make this thing. And then are people gonna buy it? So we gotta increase the price of this thing when we sell it, and are people really gonna buy it? It's a gamble. It's a mega gamble.
Mom and pop game shop and discussing about the prints and buying and engaging with games this way. It's a small portion. It's called goodwill. There's a qualitative portion of the business that should still be there, despite it maybe not being a moneymaker. PlayStation has just completely lost.
Tell me that when you run your own business. When you start your own business, trust me, like the whole idea of this goodwill goes out the window. It really does, right? I've started a few business of my own thinking that I can run it my way and I can do all these things where I can make it environmentally friendly, etc. But realistically, once I look at the profit margin and how much I'm bleeding out trying to do all these friendly, consumer friendly or environmentally friendly shenanigans, I'm like, fuck this. I am not dealing with this. I want more money, okay? I need to feed my dog. I need to feed my cat. I have my grandma, whatever, right? Or myself. Even I'm struggling with myself.
Lost this idea.
Why the hell would I want to spend money on you?
Take care of the enthusiast space. Discs are niche. It is something that's not nearly as big anymore. And people that, like myself, that are involved in this shit, I think it's easier if we just acknowledge that, yes, that's simply what it is. But let's champion the prospect of it stays around so we can keep engaging with it.
Who's gonna champion it? Who has the free time to champion or spend, I don't know, 1 hour a day to preach about how we should keep disc for video games, how we should keep producing it, right? Realistically, there's no benefit to fighting for physical disc in video games. Realistically, because then even I promote the idea of producing physical disc, but let's be honest, me, you, and your friends are not gonna buy physical discs. Maybe you have that one enthusiastic friend that will buy physical games, but realistically, no one's gonna buy the physical shit, okay? It's just way more convenient to buy your game on Steam, have it all in your Steam library, and then you just download it from there when you want to play it, all right? And then the room that you have, the space that you have, instead of having like a whole wall for your video game like this guy, you could probably get a bigger bed, which is more important than collecting a game in this physical form. But like you have these gaming enthusiasts that's just arguing against reality. Like realistically, there's no incentive to buying the physical game besides being able to share with your friends. We're past that point now. I mean, I think Nintendo has a good idea. Like you could have a little cartridge that's the size of a chip or a memory card. I think that's a pretty good idea, and they should just shrink down the size. That will save a lot of space. That will use like a quarter of the space. I think that's totally good. But only gaming enthusiasts will have this collection. Okay, like your average normie gamer is not gonna spend money and space to buy physical disc. They're not gonna champion for physical disc because it's a waste of space, because you could easily keep that game in the digital library like on Steam.
And that's it. And we can have our vinyl moment, right? It only goes through PlayStation. There's no third-party manufacturers of PlayStation consoles. It has to be PlayStation to offer a disc drive. It has to be PlayStation that is printing those discs. We've seen how they treat other aspects of the business. They don't emulate games in-house. They contract that out.
Yep.
They've contracted it out since.
There's nothing wrong with contracting other people to do your job. It's like, you're a dog groomer, and then now you're hiring employees to do the dog grooming. That's totally normal. I'm not against that. It's just a software, right? You just tell someone to use this software besides you.
The mid-2022 relaunch. They can't even be bothered to emulate their own games. If you're not bothered with doing discs, contract out somebody else.
That's fine.
Just find somebody else to do it.
That's fine.
Keep it around so that we can keep enjoying what makes the medium so.
I don't get this argument. Why is it a problem that someone else is emulating the game? Why does it have to be the creator? I don't think that the creator. Do you think Mr. Beast is doing everything for his video? Do you think that he's doing the construction for the set? Do you think that Mr. Beast is editing his own video? He doesn't edit anymore. He doesn't edit his own video. He just manage and he talks in the video. He managed a team, and Bingo, right? This is what companies do. It's what they do. They make things more efficient, and they also maximize profit. And if you have a problem, if people have a problem with the physical disc like not being made anymore, don't buy the game. Don't buy the digital. But guess what? People are gonna keep buying the digital. You're gonna throw there's really little incentive to printing the physical copy of the game anymore for companies.
Fun, engaging, and it's just, again, it's part of the culture. And even when somebody is purely
Cultures
digital,
die.
they're still part of the culture.
Sorry, but
because
cultures
they're watching
die.
this video, and they're watching everybody else complain about this. It's really great that so many people are being vocal, even when they're completely digital, and their buying habits have shifted away from this stuff. Because they still like the culture of this. You know?
Yeah, I don't
why
deny
are we
it.
getting rid of it?
I don't deny it. I like watching VHS. I like watching movies in VHS. But realistically speaking, if you're telling me to have a whole room in my house to store VHS tape versus me storing everything in 2 hard drives, I would much rather put all my movies in hard drives than to have it all individually stored in a cassette. I just don't have that space.
It's too soon, and now I'm starting to think it really should never go away. But, you know, the ball's in PlayStation's court. We'll see how this pans out over time, but it's still greatly disappointing that this is where we found ourselves. Alyssa, it's you.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh God. I could beat that
It's
cat's
you.
ass.
That's you. What do you think, Alyssa? This is a physical copy of Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy on PlayStation 4.
Yeah, he doesn't care. Well, yeah, I mean, I totally understand your qualms about no longer producing physical disc. But are you going to incur the cost, right? Probably not. Companies that want to thrive, they have to lead the physical realm. They cannot just keep making physical disc. That's just a fact, okay? In order for a company to exist and keep making games, they have to keep profiting. That's just how it is. They have to get with the times. Look at Blockbuster, for example, right? Blockbuster were so hard stuck on renting out physical copies instead of doing Netflix or streaming. They died out. They did. They absolutely died out. I mean, yeah, you could have the streaming service, and then you could also have the physical renting service as well. But there's really little to no incentive. Very little. I'm sure there's a little bit of incentive. They're probably still gonna profit, but from my experience, from all my friends, they much rather stream their movies than to rent a movie, because renting costs money. And nobody has time. People have to commute to Blockbuster, okay? Why? And that's gonna take like 2 hours out of your day. Why would you want to spend 2 hours commuting? Nobody's gonna commute to Blockbuster when they could just turn on the TV, their smart TV, and just open the Netflix app. That's just how it is. It's that convenience. Convenience and saving time is... I prioritize my time more than this gaming culture. I think my time is like one of the most valuable thing ever, and I'm not going to give up my time and space and money to get a physical copy of something when I could just get it digitally. That's just a fact. And this guy that's like telling people, these like non-game or basic gamers, to champion for physical disc, they're not gonna do it. They're simply not. Physical disc is dying out, just like the VHS, just like the Walkman. It's all dying out. It's about time you accept reality.